NWP Radio.
You're listening to NWP Radio, a production of the National Writing Project. NWP.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. I'm thrilled to be back for another episode of the National Writing Project's The Right Time, and can't think of a better way to spend a Tuesday evening in May. The April showers did what they should, and now the perennials are blooming in my lawn everywhere. It's wonderful. My name is Brian Ripley Crandall. I'm a National Writing Project Director in Connecticut at Fairfield University, where I first learned of the amazing leadership and brilliance of tonight's special guest. In fact, my work also led me to a local librarian in Connecticut a few weeks ago who is a fan of children's and young adult literature, just like Tanya and me. And guess what? She shares the same admiration for the conversation we'll soon be getting underway. But first, I have to check on my West Coast partner, Tanya. I said Tanya earlier. I don't know why I was saying that. My partner in crime, the one and only. Round of applause for the incredible Tanya Baker. How you doing?
Brian, I'm great. Thanks. I'm so excited for tonight's conversation. And I am guessing that your semester must be drawing to a close because your energy level is extra enthusiastic tonight. And the weather in Northern California is practically perfect right now and matches my enthusiasm for tonight's episode. In the studio with us tonight, we have the incredible author Ellen O and the amazing teacher librarian Melissa Thom. Ellen, Brian, and I have been just shouting your praises for as long as we've had this show, actually, especially in support of We Need Diverse Books, that movement that so many incredible writers have signed on to. We know the movement has also had a tremendous influence on so many teachers in our network. Melissa, we are thrilled to have you with us tonight, too, and to eavesdrop on the conversation about books, writing, reading, and the ways that our classrooms and libraries benefit from rich storytelling. We are so happy to welcome you both here tonight.
Woo! And I am so fortunate and honored to say we have Ellen. Oh my God! That's my joke. Oh my God, it's Ellen. Oh, on the right time tonight. I first learned about her amazing work when we chose Flying Lessons and Other Stories as part of our youth programming through a seed grant back in the day. The collection she edited was outstanding, and we could do a show on that text alone, but that's not our job tonight. It's my job to introduce her to the NWP audience. Ellen O is an award-winning author and editor of middle grade and young adult books such as Colliding Worlds of Mina Lee, You Are Here, Haru Zombie Dog Hero, Finding Junie Kim, The Dragon Egg Princess, the Spirit Hunters series, books 1, 2, and 3, and the Prophecy trilogy, Prophecy, Warrior, and King. She is also the editor of We Need Diverse Books, middle grade anthology, Flying Lessons and Other Stories, and the YA anthology, A Thousand Beginnings and Endings. Ellen is a founding member of We Need Diverse Books, WNDB, a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing diversity in children's literature. Originally from New York City, Ellen now lives in Rockville, Maryland with her husband, 3 children, 2 dogs, you just heard mine, and has yet to satisfy her quest for a decent bagel. Oh, you haven't found a decent bagel? I love a good bagel. You can visit her online at ellenoh.com. elleno.com. Woo-woo!
Ellen, I live in the East Bay of outside of San Francisco, and I really feel your pain about bagels. There aren't any here either. But anyway, Melissa Thom is a teacher librarian at Bristow Middle School in West Hartford, Connecticut. She has been an educator for 22 years and is the immediate past president of the Connecticut Association of School Librarians. She was a 2019 AZLE Social Media Superstar Reader Leader finalist and a Library Journal Mover and Shaker in 2022. In her free time, she sews #literacy-inspired crafts for her joyful making Etsy shop. Find Melissa on Blue Sky or Instagram at Ms. Thom Bookitis. You're going to have to look at the slide for that, and Facebook, or visit her website, melissathom.com. Melissa, it's so great to have you here tonight. I'm going to flip the slide, and I believe you're going to get us started with a writing prompt. And again, we won't stop the show because that does not make good listening for other people. But if you're watching on your own device and want to pause and write to Melissa's prompt, you are more than welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been really highly anticipating this conversation. I can't wait to talk to Ellen about so many things. And my question, my writing prompt to start us is, why do you think stories are important? And can a story ever change someone's mind or heart? So write about a time a book, a movie, or a story impacted you, or make up a story that changes someone's life.
Great prompt. We wish you the best of luck with your conversation. Enjoy each other's company. We'll be back on in a little while.
Well, thank you so much. So Ellen, so good to see you again.
Same.
Yeah, it's been a few years, but you can see my Nerd Camp pillow in the background. Ellen was our keynote a while back when we were virtual during COVID. But my first question has to do with the writing prompt that I just shared. So we're starting our conversation today with that writing prompt that asked students, why do you think stories are important? So I would love if you could just talk about, has there been a story, either one that you read or that you personally wrote, that changed your heart or perspective in a meaningful way?
Oh, absolutely. This is kind of like the heart of why I became an author. Because, growing up Asian American in the US as a Gen Xer, like I almost never saw Asian American representation in books. Never. Hardly saw it in TV, barely saw it in the movies. It was just not there. And I did not actually find myself in the pages of a book until I was in college. And that book was The Joy Luck Club. And I'm gonna just say it. I think this was incredible books that has affected so many people, right? Not just Asian Americans, but so many people. It's because it is it's powerful storytelling, first of all, excellent stories. But it was for me the first time I saw my own experiences, my Asian American immigrant experiences in the pages of a book. And not just a book that I was reading and finding myself in, but that everybody else was, right? It was a New York Times bestseller. It wasn't just Asians falling in love with the story. It was everyone else. And that's actually the importance of diversity, not just for people who need to see representation for themselves, but for everyone else to see how important other people's stories and life experiences are. So that moment was for me, and I didn't realize that this feeling that I had had all my life of never belonging, of feeling like I could never be American enough, had happened because of a lack of representation. And that the moment I read the Joy Luck Club was transformative because it made me say to myself, no, I belong. I'm a proud Asian American. And that transformative experience didn't happen to me until I was an adult. And so what I hoped for was that my own children would see themselves in books much younger. And when I, had kids, I went looking for the books and not much had changed, right? Um, there was Linda Sue Park and Lisa Yee and Grace Lynn and Lauren Shep, yes, but I couldn't even fill a shelf of my bookcase with books about Asian American kids. And so that became the reason why I wanted to write. I wanted to specifically write children's books because I wanted my kids to have those books that was missing in my life. And so that's, talk about transformative in my life in so many levels, so many different times.
Well, and one of my follow-up questions is, so that was the spark that made you become the writer. Did you always think you wanted to be a writer even before that experience and then you having your own children, or was that something that literally just came as a result of those two things?
Yeah, no, I never thought of myself as a writer. That was just not something that even crossed my mind. In in high school, my English AP teacher was like so supportive and told me that I was a great writer. And then I went to NYU and my writing workshop didn't give me a grade higher than a C plus. And so it was like the meanest writing experience of my life. It was, soul crushing in many ways. And I think I just put away the idea of ever being a fiction writer for the rest, until I had kids and it just all came back to me how important it was. That was the moment that I became a writer. Not before then. I never thought of it.
Well, and I just think that speaks to how important and influential teachers, both elementary, middle school, high school, and then secondary or post-secondary can be. Because what if you had had a super supportive university experience? I mean,
Maybe,
you
yeah.
started writing way earlier, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I do think about that because when I did start writing, I had to kind of, partition my brain in half, like, and try to shut out the voices from that writing workshop class that I had at NYU and just like try to, forget about everything, all the criticism that I had to deal with there and just focus on the voice of my, English AP teacher saying to me, "You are a writer and you're a very good one." Like that refrain would just kind of repeat in my head, even as I wrote terrible, horrible, no good books for 10 years.
Well, let me tell you, you have a lot of really fabulous, amazing books now. And I was just saying before when we were kind of getting ready to go online, I tried to binge read a few of the middle grade that I had missed, but then I reread some of the ones that I know that I just had loved when they first came out. And I actually read one very recently before I even knew I was going to get to talk to you. So I want to start with kind of your newest, and is it your first YA? The Colliding Worlds, is it Mina Lee?
Yeah, no, that was the Prophecy series was my first published series, and those were YA.
I haven't read those yet. Like those were your earliest, but I haven't got my hands on those yet. So,
Well, it was like the first Korean fantasy series and published in the States. Yeah, I think so. Like in YA, definitely, but I can't think of any Korean fantasy that was published, to be honest, at all. So like it got a like it was way before Korean dramas and Korean historical dramas became a thing on Netflix, right? So I think people didn't really know what to make of it. But yeah, no, Colliding Worlds of Minali is my most recent YA book, and the sequel comes out next year.
oh my gosh, I did not know that. I'm very excited. I absolutely devoured that book. I think I even got an advanced copy of it. Oh, yes. So this is a question that is specific to that. It says, well, you explore the themes of identity and belonging. So I'm kind of curious what inspired that particular story. So give us a little synopsis of that story, and what do you really hope readers take away from it?
Well, so Colliding Worlds of Minali is my homage to my favorite music video of ever as a Gen Xer, Aha's Take on Me, right? Like I always loved the idea of being swept away from one world to another. And in Colliding Worlds, Minali is a webcomic artist who creates this webcomic world and then suddenly gets sucked into that world and she's stuck in it, right? Uh, and so I was like, yeah, this is great. This is like, take on me. And then as I'm writing it, I realize it's completely changing because like I think all authors will talk about how at some point your characters take over and you're no longer in control of the story. And I feel that that very much happened to me because this story went from being something kind of lighthearted to something much deeper. It changed into a story about free will. And it was kind of like based on when I was a teen, how I felt very much like I had no free will because I had to do exactly what my parents wanted me to do. And I really hated that so much. Like, 'cause my mom insisted I had to be a doctor. My dad wouldn't allow me to date until I was much older. They kept such a tight hold on me because they were old school Asian immigrants, right? And they can be kind of scary. And on top of it, my mom, who's Catholic, would pile the guilt on really thick and heavy, which is actually far worse in some ways than getting a whooping. But, the guilt and the disappointment, the mental and emotional manipulation, all of that stays with you for decades. And I think a lot of parents do that, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Like they kind of burden their children with their own thoughts and beliefs of what they think is best for them, right? And I found that I wanted to write a story about that push and pull, right? Your parents want the best for you, but do they always know what's best for you? Um, I know that I finally broke free of like the iron control that my parents had on me, and it was such a relief. And even though the path I took and the obstacles that I had to overcome was hard, and you make a lot of mistakes, I think that's how you learn, how you grow. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted a story about that. Uh, but I also wanted it to be fun and adventureful and like, make it as exciting as possible. So I really just, I let loose in Colliding Worlds. I got to be honest.
Well, I'm so glad because it really is a captivating story. And the whole aspect of her meeting Jin, who is a childhood best friend who, in her world, and I don't think this is a spoiler because you know this in the very beginning. So he died when he was very little, and he is in this different world, and it's like multiverse to me, and it just is, all these different possibilities, and a decision you make will create a new reality, and then like what if, and there's so many layers and depth to this story. I can't wait for our listeners to go grab it right away if they haven't read it yet. And one of my questions is, are your parents still alive?
My father passed. My mom's still alive. Yeah. She's still mad at me for giving up being a lawyer to now being a writer. So like, she was mad I didn't become a doctor. Now she's mad I'm no longer a lawyer, but oh well.
Has she
But
read any of your books?
oh no, no, no.
Oh, oh.
She read Prophecy a long time ago and she said, "Oh, yeah, no, that was good, but you have to make it more exciting." And I was just like,
Well,
more deaths? I mean, I feel like I killed enough people and demons in that book, but okay, okay. So,
oh,
but my mom's always going to be my harshest critic in some ways, and
right. You
but
just love her for it and move on.
yeah. But I will say that where in Colliding Worlds and Mina Lee, it's really exploring identity. In the sequel, Jin is really going to be exploring the idea of belonging.
Oh, I can't wait. And when does that come out? Remind us. Next.
Next year, I don't quite know when, but sometime next year, yeah. And
Wow.
I know I'm excited because that book was wow, different and hard in another whole way because it really falls into the multiverse.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Well, and so kind of to shift a little bit, like I I came to know you mostly with Junie Kim. I feel like that was really the first book that I read by you that it really has stuck with me. And then when I started to look into all of the works that you've done, I was kind of astounded. You are such a diverse writer in the sense of, I mean, you have written everything from zombie dogs, which I just recently finished, to spirit hunters, to warrior queens that I mean, do you have a favorite character you've written? And I really dislike it when my students ask authors, what's your favorite book? Because I know it's hard to choose, but I don't know. I guess I'm going to break my own rule. And is there a character that you've written that you've just really like loved more? Or maybe it's the time you wrote it and then, or one that surprised you? Because as you said, the story takes over and you don't always have control once you get going. So have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, I will say that I've had several experiences where the story just takes over, right? Although, as a writer, I always write my conclusion. And first, I write my conclusion first. That has never changed. My conclusion is always the same. But how the story gets to the conclusion, sometimes the characters will be like, no, 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 we're not going to do that, right? So, like, I've had that happen to me. I've had it change completely. But in terms of like a favorite character, when when I like usually I say, I can't pick a favorite book. But I actually can pick a favorite character pretty easily because it would be Haru, who is my zombie dog, because I love dogs. I mean, I have two dogs. Dogs are the best. And honestly, Haru is not only the most loyal, most loving, most courageous dog, even as a zombie. actually, because he would be a zombie, he would be also the strongest and most deadliest dog in the world, and nobody would be able to hurt me if he was around. So it, hands down, easy choice. It would be Haru.
And that is also a great story. I think that's the one I read most recently. I just really enjoyed the character and the voice of the character.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and then kind of switching a little bit to your historical fiction slash realistic fiction I just mentioned Finding Junie Kim. Um, I know in the author's note, I think you talk a little bit about how it's a little connected to your own personal family story. So was that a different experience of writing something that was, something that happened to you and not in your imagination or just creating a character that you wanted to see in a book? But like, tell us a little bit about that experience.
So, I think I always say this, Finding Junie Kim to date has been the hardest book I've ever written. In many ways. One, I had to do so much research. Like I'm the type of person to do overkill in research as it is. But like, when I'm dealing with specifically Korean history, of what was a very, very terrible experience in Korean history, I wanted to make sure I got it as correct as possible. So I did a lot of research. I went to Korea. I talked to a lot of survivors of the Korean War. And also I used one of the most important stories that happened in my mom's life, which is that, when she was a very young girl, um, they were living in Incheon when the bombing of Incheon happened. And before the bombing happened, her parents had actually, her father had been arrested, my grandfather, and taken to a jail in Seoul. And my grandmother sold all the belongings to go and bribe the guards and to get him out. I mean, this is all true story. Like she left four little kids with a teenage maid who promptly took the money that was left her and ran away. And I can't say I would blame her, right? Like war is happening. Um, and then my mom would tell this story all the time about how she would walk for weeks, you know, with no food, her and her little, holding her little brother, um, and how the only food that they would get sometimes were from passing American soldiers who would throw candy and rations at them. So it was like, this story that kind of like I'd been told my entire life, that when I became an adult, realized, hey, wait a minute, that's actually a true story. Like, you know, it wasn't a tall tale. That was actually a true story. And I did a lot of research and I wanted to tell the story that of Korea and how how split it was, how two ideologies clashing caused so much terrible pain and violence and death in the country, because when people become too extreme in their belief system, people suffer, right? So I wanted to tell that story, and that was really hard. And then separately, um, I was telling the story about what was happening to my kids in school, dealing with very, very honestly what happened right after the 2016 election and the bullying that they all dealt with, but specifically my youngest. And so, you know, the things that happened in the story, I pulled back. In real life, it was even worse, right? So, from that aspect, it was really hard to write. But
Wow.
I think it was important too.
So extremely important. I mean, there's just so much there that so I don't think sometimes readers even fully understand or grasp the depth at which the author has gone to write the story that they get in their hands, and I think that's another really important reason why, as teachers and librarians and professors, we help our students make those connections and connect with the person behind the story and go deeper and ask questions. And I just think like when I hear you talk about it, I mean, I knew that because I'd read about it and I've read the story, but you saying it to me face to face, just it gives it more depth and layer and goes back to the original prompt, like how do stories change people's lives? I mean, and you talk about the things that were happening to your own children. That's still happening in schools to kids all over the place for all different reasons, but kind of at the core, it's that, the hate and the ignorance and people not understanding and being accepting of who others are and, judging instead of going at the world's curiosity. Like, I feel like if we can come with curiosity, we're more likely to make a connection than if we come with a judgment. And I think your books, all of them, whether they're science fiction or fantasy or horror or the realistic historical fiction, I think they all can get to that same. So just again, I'm going to say this multiple times in this conversation. Thank you so much for everything that you have shared, because you just give us so much to then bring out to readers.
Oh, thank you. And like I have to say, it is painful to know that it is also my most banned book.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. That is such an important topic also. And as a librarian, I'm dealing with it like not personally in my school, thankfully, but as the president of the Connecticut Association of School Librarians, it's happening in every state. Nobody is exempt. And I think that we just need to keep talking about it and sharing the information and promoting these titles, because sometimes when the other side is trying to say, don't read this book, it actually has an opposite effect on some level, but it still is damaging. It is so damaging in different ways. So I'm glad you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think the most damaging part of it is basically the ripples, right? It's the sustaining damage that's going to happen over the long term, because publishing is still about making money, and also it takes a long time. It takes a long time for books to get published. So we may not see what happens right away, but we will feel the ripple effects of it. We will see when a lot of marginalized authors stop writing their stories because they can't get published, or because the experience of being banned, of being harassed, of being the target of so many death threats becomes too much mentally, emotionally, right? We're going to lose voices constantly. We're going to scare off new authors. We're going to lose authenticity because people will be afraid to tell their true story. Not everybody's willing to do that. And we're going to see the New York Times bestsellers list already. Actually, we're seeing that already change from being so diverse to, again, losing all diversity. And, these are the things that they want. That's the sad thing. That's the whole reason they've been banning books. They want us to go backward. They don't like the fact that WNDB has been successful. It was easy to ignore diverse books when we were only 7% of the books being published in any given year. All of a sudden, 10 years of WNDB's work changed that to over 45% books being published, and then they couldn't ignore it. Then it became almost an existential threat to them, to their way of life, right? And so they have to challenge it and ban it as much as possible. And the sad thing is that they're doing that will kill kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's shift a little bit to that topic, because that was another section of questions I wanted to just kind of engage in a little bit, is the we need diverse book movement, which, as in your introduction you just mentioned, like you are the root, the heart of that whole movement that has grown, because I've been a librarian officially for 10 years now. I've been an educator for 22 years, and I have seen the shift a little bit in all of these amazing. I did my AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander book display, and I have so many amazing options to put out. I don't even have room on my I usually display them on, because there's just so many amazing options out there. And you really bring up a good point that all of the book bans and the pushback and the hatred that is being spewed towards all BIPOC and LGBTQ community members, it is going to have that ripple effect. And we will not truly know, like you said, for a few years out, how this has truly affected. So I don't know, it's not an easy question, but what advice do you have for the young writers from those underrepresented groups that are feeling like they're the targets of some of this negative hatred and all the things that are happening? What do you say to them? Like, if they're listening out there now, or as teachers, what can we help share with our students? What's the message?
I think the most important message to everybody, right? Because, the book bans specifically target not only BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities, but also the disabilities community and women, because the issues that affect women are the subjects most targeted, right? Sexual assault, rape, pregnancy, things that certain parts of the community want to keep taboo, but that these stories are written and shared in books, which are the best and safest way to share them, right? Like, I'd much rather my kids got important information from a book than from a website on a phone from the internet, right? Anyway, my point being, there's so much damage, so much harm that's being done by the book bans. They want to stop our voices. They want us not to share our stories. And so when I say, when I talk to young writers and young creators and artists, I tell them, don't stop sharing your stories. Whatever creative format that looks like, whether you're a filmmaker or an artist or a sculptor or a writer or an illustrator, whatever it is, tell your story, share your story, because stories are how we connect to one another. Stories are how we share our collective humanity. They are so powerful, right? And stories reach and touch individuals. And the book bans know how powerful stories are. So when they ban them, they are shutting out the way for people to connect, keeping them separate. And when you keep them separate, right, then they can't band together to rise up, and fight what we see, all the wrongs that we're seeing. So, there's so many levels of what's happening. And, sometimes I go to a school and people are like, oh, there's so many other things more important than book bans, is what they'll say to me. They'll say, we have to fight climate change. We have to fight, for our voting rights. We have to fight for abortion. And I say, yes. And it's all connected with book bans.
Mm-hmm.
It's all connected. And they'll look at me like, what do you mean? How is it connected? And I'm like, because books are power, books are knowledge, books are the way we share information. They are the most powerful medium right now. And by cutting out access, by stopping kids from reading freely, you take that power away. You take the knowledge base away. And the less educated your population is, the more easily it is to manipulate them, right? And then they won't care about voting rights. They won't care about the climate. They won't care about women's rights. That's their final aim.
Yeah, the apathy, to create apathy among the masses, and just overstimulation and over everything is coming at us at the same time, and it's really hard to pick a focus because we feel like everything is on fire. That's how I've been feeling lately. But a couple of things that it makes me think of that I take away from what you just said is we need to continue to work together in our communities and just shout, just kind of tune out the noise on the outside as best we can and focus on our mission and continue to meet people where they are. And I mean, that is my calling as a librarian and an educator and an activist. I just want to meet people where they are and bring what they don't have to them and get books into the hands of everybody that I can. And there's a couple quotes that I've written down as I collect golden lines when I read books. Like I have just a whole notebook of things that just make me stop and think. And a couple from Kelly Yang, who I also love all of the stuff she does. And she has been such a powerful force, I feel like, in the world of speaking up and fighting against some of the hatred that has been really prevalent for years now. In her key player, she says, joy is a form of resistance and passion is a form of activism. So, like finding our passion, your passion is writing and telling stories, and my passion is sharing these stories and talking about them and just trying to keep that love of reading going. Um, I just think that again, better together. Find the people in your community. If you feel isolated, you need to work a little harder maybe to try to make that connection because we can't let them isolate us. Like you said, that's kind of the goal.
Mhm. And we have to support our teachers and our librarians because, you know, the whole like this whole backlash against teachers and librarians is because they are the gatekeepers of books, right? They're the ones standing up for the books, fighting against book bans. And I truly think that, we have to, as a population, fight back against all the negativity that's being, thrown at our educators, our librarians, uh, and anybody who makes a stand against banned books and censorship.
Right. Yes. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, I think, of our conversation. And so, going along with that joy as an act of resistance, my last question I want to ask you is what is something in either your personal or professional or a combination thereof that is currently bringing you joy right now in your life?
Oh my gosh, like we definitely need to find joy in our life these days, right? Um, Getting off social media brings me joy. Seeing beautiful art, listening to great music, reading fabulous books, eating delicious food, hanging out with dear friends and families, all of these things bring me joy. But not just joy, they keep me sane in what I consider some of the most difficult times right now for everybody. I think that is our way of saying that, Melissa, what you were saying before about finding community. I think that's more important than ever. I think that that's one of the key messages we learned during the pandemic, that
Mhm.
cutting off people's connections can be extremely dangerous. So now more than ever, we have to find ways to connect.
I agree.
Well, that was wonderful. And I was sitting here going crazy because I wanted to jump into the conversation and like and cheer you on. And then I found my original paperback and then I found my hard copy up in the and I was like, okay, I got those still. And then I was like, all the other ones are in my office at work. And you know what I'm pulling from this that I didn't realize? You kept shouting out Gen X. I thank you for that because I'm Gen X too, class of 1990. And I think thinking, yeah, we do have a different mindset. We grew up in a time where multiculturalism was coming into our college classrooms. They were diversifying the reading in the canon. I was thinking about Maxine Hung Kingston's Woman Warrior and how that might be my favorite book ever written because it just changed me so much in the way I thought about the world. And I mention that only because I think you too are a woman warrior. You know, you've got this fight in you, you've got this inspiration in you, and you are weaving and telling the stories that so many of our kids need to hear, but you're also doing it with a unified front of others. And that's what makes you so super special. I'm so happy that we were able to have you on this show. And Melissa, I texted Tanya and I said, "Boy, we got the perfect match. Melissa knows her stuff. She knows Eleanor's work."
No kidding. That was a great conversation. I'm really thankful to both of you for your thoughtfulness and your like interaction around really important things that we need to be talking more about today. Um, Melissa, I want to make sure we save time for you to take us out with a writing prompt. And again, we won't stop and write right now, but we're near the end, so we could do it afterward if we wanted to. Melissa, why don't you go ahead?
All right. So kind of to wrap up this super powerful, amazing conversation, I want to say, what stories, topics, or perspectives do you feel are still lacking or missing from current children's literature? Because we need to continue to share those stories. So do some reflection on what you have looked for but haven't really found yet. So that's my question to leave us with today.
I love that question.
I do too. What a great question. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa and Alan, again, that was a really lovely and timely conversation, and I really appreciate it. Brian, I've missed you, and it's been lovely to host another episode of The Right Time with you. And listeners, we're really glad and thankful that you are here. We hope that on Melissa's great recommendations, you've ordered a pile of L&O's books and you've decided what order you're going to approach them in with your summer coming up. If you want to stay connected to the National Writing Project and The Right Time and great conversations like these, please go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, join our community in the studio.nwp.org, where you could just go right now and find out who else wants to read L&O with you this summer. Or you can also follow all our podcasts at bit.ly NWP Radio. Thanks, everybody, and have a great night.
You're listening to NWP Radio, a production of the National Writing Project.
NWP. NWP Radio.